And this is why, like, it's, and I've said it before, right, on the channel. This is why it's so important not to, um, uh, oh, he's gone. Never mind. Not to talk to
You
climate
bored
change.
them. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm sure they'll be
He's
back.
coming back. Oh, there it
Sorry,
is.
I'm back. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. This is why it's important not to humor magical thinking. You
Yeah.
know, uh, because like they people are allowed to exist in a state where like this makes sense, right? Like people will validate all other parts of their belief system, right? They're going to validate, yes, Jesus Christ came back, right? Jesus Christ was a Jewish zombie at some point, and he did magical things, right? But that kind of religious thinking like places all the magic somewhere in the deep, deep past, right? And then like doesn't like really expect much of today, except like, oh, miracles happen, even though we can't prove it, we can't show it, we can't control it, we can't experiment for it, we can't do any of that, right? Things, right? But like miracles happen, right? And in a big sense. But the magical part is someplace far in the past that we can't observe. But once you say that the magical part happened in the first place, well, then there's like from their perspective, right? From the perspective of like the Christian, it's logical to believe, well, yeah, the big magic can happen today, right? There's no reason why the big magic can happen. We all agree apparently it happened before, so why can't it happen now? That's why you just can't entertain this shit. You just got to stop it at the source.
Yeah, dude, it's really pernicious. It's really the conspiratorial thinking, like just it takes over so much, leads into flat earth. I mean, flat earth, like there is zero atheist flat earth people, zero. There is a zero, zilch. You know what I mean? There's no it's all religious people that, again, that are just, it's like they fall into these traps, man. It's really sad. And I don't know, dude. It's so pernicious now. Like it gets into so much of our society, and we've allowed it to kind of like by coddling it and stuff, and allowing it to like be like, okay, we'll work around you. It's okay, like, all right. Now we've gotten to the point where it's like we have serious ramifications now because of it. There are atheist flat earthers, really, Miss Cake. Wow. That's incredible. Miss Cake's in the flat earth, like, as a skeptic or whatever, or sorry, as a glober, and as a flat earth skeptic. So thank you for correcting me, Miss Cake. That blows my mind, actually. That blows my mind. How? Wow. I'm shocked by that.
I imagine it's just people who have a misunderstanding of how physics works, or a skepticism of physics in the first place. Yeah. Like when I had actually debated, well, yeah, a simple way of saying it is I debated a flat earther one time, and like it wasn't supposed to be my debate, it's supposed to be someone else's debate, and then I ended up jumping in on it. So it's not like I came in there prepared, like, oh, okay, what are the flat earth arguments? I hadn't bothered really going into like the flat earth debate, right? I hadn't actually experienced it. Then I experienced the magic myself, and oh my god, right? Like it's like, oh, like the ether exists, and there is these like exotic like forces that are acting upon the universe that we haven't measured, have no proof of. Everything to like make these things like work out, right? It's like, yeah, we don't want, we have some exotic fundamental universal forces that me and my friends or whatever, some guy on YouTube discovered. Yeah. With what machinery, with what measurements, with what experimentation, it doesn't matter, right? But I got a guy on YouTube, he told me about this. Okay, all right, well, that's something that base your whole life perspective and personality on. Some guy on YouTube told you.
Nobody's ever a silent flat earther. Nobody's.
Yeah, they're not like, they never chill about it. It's like they got to go full in, right? This is the thing that like they got to talk to their family members like during Thanksgiving, right? Like, no, we
Yeah.
gotta talk about this thing, guys.
Yeah, dude, it's so funny. Yeah, dude, you know what's so funny? I'm really interested in conspiracy, like, genuinely, like, why people believe what they believe, but, dude, flat Earth is the one conspiracy that I genuinely just cannot get into, and I don't wanna like, debate it, I don't wanna learn about it, I think it's just
It's a
like, because you
lot,
really have to, like, learn about the conspiracy
a
in order to
lot.
actually debate the conspiracy, and it's just like, I have no interest in it, I don't know what it is, like, I don't know, it's just
It's not just that, you also have to know the physics. Like, they're gonna
Mhm.
pull out a
Yeah,
whole bunch of things, like, "Oh, how do you explain this?" Right? And there's,
yeah,
an explanation for every single bit of it, right? But, like,
yeah,
the normal person, certainly me, like, I don't know. I can't tell you, right? Like, but
yeah,
I
exactly.
I've seen pieces of it, but, like, I haven't studied it, I don't have it all off the top of my head, and I certainly can't perform the mathematical formulas to actually prove it. And so it's difficult. The other thing, that's similar to this that I learned, guys, check the DMs to, be a part of the, stream.
Thanks.
Um, but the other thing that, is like this, is, Holocaust, denial.
Hmm.
Mhm,
Um, like, it is harder than you think to prove that 6 million, of our Jewish brothers and sisters died, in the Holocaust, right? Like, that's actually not as, easy and straightforward as you think it might be. Um, and like, there apparently was, and this is actually not like, um, this is not a, an unusual thing, right? Like, there was no like order, no written order any which way to like, hey, kill all the Jews, right?
mhm.
Um, in that same way, but like they understood what they were doing was like awful and like and dangerous. That's why they didn't do it. But like in other genocidal, situations, they generally don't like put out an order, an APB out for the ethnicity they're trying to get rid of. Um, so that's like not unusual. But the problem is that okay, now you got to prove it, and it's not so easy. Now, most of society just kind of accepts it, but like if you were on the spot, you'd have a lot more trouble than you think you would. A Holocaust denial would say all kinds of things that like the normal person simply won't have the knowledge to debunk, and it's really unfortunate. Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
absolutely. Like even going back to the flat Earth, like I would not agree to a flat Earth debate. At least not without like at least like a week or two's advance notice. Because like even though like I've taken multiple physics courses and like I teach some aspects of physics now, but like I know that I have to do some preparation to deal with like their talking points and all the things that they have pretty much like made up to lay the
It's
foundation
just
of
made up
their
nonsense. Yeah. Like, yeah,
yeah.
it's like
but
if
like to
someone
actually
has a whole,
address it and
yeah,
debunk it, like that takes some serious like legwork that like I know that I would have to put in the work to do that.
they
That's
have
what
a
I think.
framework of made up nonsense. So yeah, like you have to have like the understanding to actually break each piece down, and that's not easy, right? Like and you're doing the concept of a debate where like for a lot of people who like it's just a matter of who is more confident looking, right? Who can express themselves with more confidence, and if you aren't completely confident in what you're trying to say here, like you'll lose any which way. So it's not easy. Shout out to people who do it.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
there's a built-in, at least from my perspective, a built-in asymmetry. Even just like, well, I
exactly.
guess maybe as preview for your debate with the creationists, it's like I think it's a much easier explanation to get across the message of like, well, God did it, and this is all like whatever in the text, as opposed to like getting into the weeds of like evolution and mutation and natural selection. Okay, that takes
Mhm.
time, even though like I understand it and I think I can explain it competently, but like it's just at the at its heart, it's just more complex than just whatever divine divine command or like just God did it. It's just a much easier explanation.
Yeah, it's like it's crazy. I mean, I think the one thing, like the people that are deep in conspiracy, and this is like I will say there are a lot of things, but they are not like uneducated. They are
Mm.
educated in the conspiracy. They are not educated through like academic means or like scientific means, right? They're educated in like learning apologetics of this conspiracy, and
No, no,
that's
I
dangerous, I
I want to
think.
push back on you a little bit there.
Okay.
Like you really need to respect your enemy here, your opponent in which way, sorry, but
Yeah.
your opponent here, in that like some of them are educated, like it's like not educated in like the relevant field that the conspiracy theory is in, but like they can be extremely educated. In other, they could be a lawyer, they could be a doctor, they could be sorry, no, doctors can even fall into this. Remember the whole how was it called ivermectin thing, right? There's
Yeah,
some doctors pushing
yeah,
that,
yeah, of course.
right? But even then, right, like to then slightly even readjust that. The thing is with doctors like the people who handle you in terms of patient care aren't medical researchers, right? Those are
Yeah,
two different things. People associate them as the same thing. They're not the same thing. And so like even though your doctor may say these things, they don't actually know it. They don't actually do the research. They don't may not understand the research and the way that you would assume that they do. So yeah, so like these people tend to be educated, but usually not in like the relevant field. And then they'll use their degree, right, or their educational background as like a way to gain credibility, right? Like, oh well, I am of this, we see this like in for creationists, right? We'll say like, oh, I'm a physicist, right? And so I can tell you about evolution. Well, clearly not, right? Like those are two different things. But people say scientist equals smart,
All
yeah,
equal he
knowing.
must know. He's talking, yeah, exactly, right? And he's just not educated in the relevant field. So that happens all the time. So so I guess my just slight pushback to you
yeah,
is
yeah.
that yes, they actually might be highly educated, but it doesn't mean you know.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree. I think that like that they are yeah, that's one of the reasons why. Yeah, I don't know when people say like education is going to solve the like this conspiracy problem or this anti-intellectualism problem. I don't know if that's like the right framing of it. Basically, like education, like of what, of how, who's gonna make the textbooks. What are we gonna learn about? Like, how are we gonna learn about it? I think it's I don't know. I think it's and especially these like communities online that kind of push these people towards this conspiratorial thinking. I don't know. I don't even know if you could put them in the highest academic, physics, geology class that money could buy, with the best professors. I don't think that would make any difference if they went home and then read 1,000 headlines about
mm,
how the bottom of the world is actually, you know it's flat, or whatever, as opposed to a flat. It's like, it's just, I don't know. I think that people are really swayed by the internet and these algorithms now. It's really sad. Yeah, I think critical thinking. Yeah, Rima, I think that's a good point. It's like, critical thinking and on top of like education too. I think that's a big point.
I think the only small part of me that is like rooting for Elon to make space travel accessible to people is that so that people can just go up into space and see. That's the only reason why there's like 0.1% of me that is like I want Elon to be able to like do that, or whatever Jeff or whatever billionaires that's trying to get people into space.
I mean,
Like, yeah.
you saw the. Sorry, maybe you didn't see it. I'm assuming. I just for some reason assume you did. But there was an expedition to Alaska. Did you see that? Or maybe you did see that, Corey, because
Antarctica.
it might have been on doesn't say Alaska, I meant Antarctica, sorry,
Yeah.
excuse me.
Hmm.
But I think on the Professor Dave, I think he might have
Yeah.
covered this.
Dude, that was
Yeah.
an amazing episode that he did. Oh my god,
Yeah. So if
it
you
was
guys don't know,
crazy.
like there's a channel called Professor Dave Explains or something. I don't
Yeah,
know.
Professor
But
Dave. Well, I think the channel is Professor Dave, and like what it is, he names his things Professor Dave explains. But yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Incredible.
And there was an episode of like an expedition of doubters, right? Like some scientific group like got an expedition together for flat earthers who assume like Antarctica is an ice wall, right? At the bottom. That's and there's an ice wall that is guarded by government agents to keep people out so they don't learn the truth. And so like they went
Is this
to
before or after Game of
Antarctica.
Thrones? I just need to know.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, exactly. So like, they went down there and they were in Antarctica. They like did a bunch of like observations as they were traveling through the air, right? Because just in case, and in case they tried to divert the flight somewhere, right? The conspiracy diverts the flight, so they're not actually landing in Antarctica somewhere else, right? But no, they realized They were in Antarctica, and they did a bunch of experiments. All the things they thought would not be possible, like in Antarctica, they did it. Uh, then, and they proved them themselves. But then, like even then, like people who weren't there in Antarctica, but were like part of their crew, they were observing all of this, right? Because it's live streamed, even
And
as
different
well,
live
right?
streams, yeah, like drones
Yeah,
flying around, live stream. It's like,
yeah, it was live streamed, but then like there was like some like I know like video artifacting or like some weird things like slight glitches, just like regular like production glitches that happened. They're like, well, that's it. This was
that's
all lies, right? And the guys who went down there, see, well, they're shills now, right?
yeah, yeah.
Part of it. It was crazy. Yeah.
I love that. I love it. Yeah, because a couple of them to change their mind, and then that wasn't like they basically go, yeah, Miss Cake, that's true. They simply proved a 24-hour sun. That was it. Like if the
Yeah.
24-hour sun that shows that it doesn't set, then that means that they're at the
Mhm.
bottom and that kind of stuff. But yeah, they had these huge drones flying up like 20 feet in the air, so it's bigger than any sound stage or any video thing. And like and still people were like, "Oh, the conspiracy's bigger than we thought. Unbelievable."
But
Oh my
and
god.
another thing that's clear, right? And I mean, Ken Hovind probably is part of. Ken Hovind is probably a true believer. But like for a lot of these people, like so, like the live stream was happening of this event that I was describing, right? And then other people were restreaming it, right? These were the flat earthers, right? But they're restreaming it to their platforms where like they're getting money, right? And so it behooves them to like still deny, right? Like they're
Yeah,
literally like getting paid
yeah, exactly.
for the grift. So yeah.
Exactly, man. I mean, what do you guys think what is your personal like biggest thing that you guys have changed your minds on? Because I know that's like a foundational belief for a lot of these guys, like in order to like actually like go the other way. So I feel kind of like it is so foundational to who they are and stuff. So I'm
Mhm.
curious how far in they are, but then I feel like it's hard to really tackle your own beliefs sometimes. But like I can start. I wasn't saying like I basically I grew up like loving biology, loving life, loving like science and stuff, and I thought that basically like watched Penn and Teller BS. It was like a TV show and
Yeah, great
basically talking about
series.
mysticism stuff. And they had one about climate change, and they had like, that, how do we know the temperature of the ice core of the Earth hundreds of millions of years ago when we just discovered electricity, or that kind of stuff. And like just had like some really weird gotchas in there that I felt like it actually influenced me a little bit too much. And but I always thought it was kind of weird that like humans thought that we could impact the world so much. You know what I mean? I felt like it was like very like, oh, another thing that humans think that we're so great that we can actually like totally change the trajectory of the climate on Earth. And because the climate's huge, the Earth is huge, and we're so small in comparison. Obviously, I like one day it was like, I was after graduating high school, I was like in community college, and then I like wound up doing like my own research, like actually researching papers and stuff about it, and actually looking at the actual research about this. And I was like, oh my gosh, I am so wrong on this one. I feel so stupid. Like not only was I wrong, but I'm like 100% wrong. And then like I found out how bad it was, and I was like, oh my god, I need to like help with this as much as I can. This is so I basically dedicated my life in science in order to try to like solve that problem. But it's tough, man. It's tough to have like a foundational. It's tough to have like a core belief that you have kind of like shaken, and then you're just like, all right, I guess I was wrong. I got to go forward, though. That's the first step in learning.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I think it's when people like Ken Hovind and other whatever Ken Ham is also another creationist.
Hmm.
But these people, like from what I understand, from what I observe, and I've watched quite a number of their debates of like, I mean, their whole identity is wrapped up in them being creationists. And like Ken
Hmm.
Ham has like whole museum. Like, what are the odds that he's going to do a complete 180? Of like, I now have to dismantle my whole infrastructure and like the museum that I built. That's probably like not going to happen, or unlikely it's going to happen. And so like in that context, like I think pretty much whenever your identity is like too wrapped up in something, the chance that you're going to change is like just dramatically decrease. But I guess maybe probably not fully answer your question, but maybe things that where I've evolved on
Hmm.
over time, maybe not have done a true 180 is like, well, so again, going back to me watching all these debates because, like, I was, heavily into whatever the new atheist movement, when
Yeah.
Richard Dawkins published his book,
Mhm.
with God Delusion,
Amazing,
Sam
amazing time to
Harris,
be on the internet.
Restorations.
Yeah.
Yeah, watched all those debates, the debate with
Mhm.
Ken Ham, Bill Nye, although I think, arguably, Bill Nye did not do the greatest
Yeah.
job in that
Yeah.
debate. I
He
can
did.
see, as much as I was rooting for him, I can see that I don't think he lost because like I'm on his side, but I can see
Yeah.
how to the audience that he lost. Um, but yeah, all that to say is like whatever. At that point in time when I was consuming all this content and more forming who I was as a person, I
Mhm.
was more, let's say, staunchly atheist. And like I still more or less identify as that now, but like
Mhm.
it's more like I have, let's say, become more open to, let's say, not that I know exactly what this word means, but I do consider myself now a more spiritual person, not a religious person, and definitely
Mhm.
not a believer in any sort of God or deity. But I'm
Mhm.
maybe slightly more sympathetic to, let's say, a spiritual aspect to humanity, as
Hmm.
opposed to
Interesting.
being whatever dead set on atheism type thing.
Yeah. I definitely like losing religion was like a huge mind melt for me. That was like I was crazy. Felt like I was seeing in color for the first time. I was like, wow, this is wow. Like I feel so free. I would go to bed as a kid crying, thinking that like God was in my head and I did not want him there. You know what I mean? Like that was so freaky to me that it was really, really evil in my
Yeah,
my thing.
I,
So
I
like
don't
to
disagree.
lose that, I was like, felt so free.
I feel pretty lucky in not being raised in any sort of like any meaningfully religious family. Like, yes, we celebrate the holidays, but it's more like we would just get together for Christmas and have dinner, but we didn't like
Mhm.
go to church or anything like that, or really have any sort of like strong religious practices, other than celebrating the typical holidays that we did. But like, yeah, I can sort of, at least in retrospect, like I can't imagine like what would I be going through if I had those type of thoughts, or I would also find that arguably traumatic. Um, and so, but also kudos to you for one about being open minded about climate change and actually like looking into the evidence and then like following the evidence.
Yeah.
That's a testament to a lot.
Thanks, man. Thank you. What do you think, Prime? What's the biggest in the spirit of these flat earthers having their mind broken and realizing that they were wrong? What was the biggest mind change that you had, do you think?
Um. So, well, this one isn't foundational, but I'll just put it out there.
Mm.
Um. Nuclear power.
Mm.
Like at first I was for it. And then I was against it. But like when I was for it, like I was just for it because it sounded good. And then I was against it. It's more the well, one looking at like the 3 Mile Island situation and like the various nuclear disasters. And then also something that really like bothered me is that like when it was being presented to me, right, like in how it's such a good thing, like watching the news, the people who were presenting, like who would come on and like talk about how great it was, or people working for the industry, right? The news does this all the time, and they don't declare it, like so it feels like they're trying to pull one over me, which is something that happens, on the news, like for war. They'll bring in people who work for like Raytheon and stuff, right? Getting paid by Raytheon. It's like, oh yeah, we definitely got to go to war, right? Defense contractors. So in any case, so then I was against it. But I had a friend I actually met on Twitch in the course of streaming, who was very much big into nuclear power. And I, as a person who's always says like I'm open to like new ideas and changing my mind, like I listened to this guy, like we had like conversations on and off over the years, and he convinced me. I was like, all right, you know what, like you convinced me. Like I listening to everything you've said and also other things I'd seen along the way. I'm like, yeah, this I'm back in the nuclear camp. That it could be an efficient power source or a worthwhile endeavor. in terms of as a power source. I'm still like all in on renewables
Yeah,
because I think like that really is like of the future.
yeah,
But nuclear could be a part of that in my mind as well. And then beyond that, uh, yeah, I mean, I had my religious deconversion in college. Like I remember the night. I don't remember the actual date, but like the night when it happened, where like I had been trying to, you know, uh, uh trying like putting more and more thought into it, right? I was never like super religious as a kid, so it wasn't like oh my god the biggest thing. Like I never even wanted to go to church. Like it was very boring to me. And like I had, you know, it's funny because like I had a when in fifth grade, a teacher of mine, you know, like recognized that like I was pretty smart or whatever, right? And I was had interest in science, and so he suggested my parents like get like a subscription to National Geographic, and so we had a bunch of those. Like the first thing that I got like was an issue on evolution. That was like the very first one, and I looked at this. I'm like, huh, interesting, right? And I tried to like express this to my parents. It's like, hey, did you know we are evolved from, you know, monkeys is how I would have said it back then, you know.
mhm,
And like yeah, we're not from like Adam and Eve. Like none of that's true, right? And then like they push back against me. And then from there, I just like tried to like marry these two things. Like okay, like I can do this. Like I understood even back then. Like oh, people lose their faith over this, but I'm not gonna lose my faith over this, right? Like I can just keep these two things separate. I literally did that. Like I literally said like oh here's category A, here's category B, right? And these things don't meet. In my head, I'll just do that. But then they did because you know I was trying to be intellectually honest with myself. And then in college is when that came to a head, and I was like sitting down, and I had like read a book by uh, you know, an atheist, and uh, I just like sat down. I was like, you know, I'm done with this, and like there was like a massive weight off of my shoulders. I felt it, like literally like felt weight coming off of me. Like once I had done that. Again, like it's not like I was deeply religious, but like it was nice to not have the two categories that I had to do in my head. I was like, oh, okay, I can just discard this and move on with my life, and it was really nice. So
yeah.
I think it's
Mhm.
pretty common. From what I encountered, like some people still try to reconcile, or like I think they process it of like whatever God started off the process of evolution, but then like he just like the starting point, and then hands off approach type of
Yeah,
thing.
it's the dead god, the
theist,
philosophy.
yeah,
Yeah, it's like
yeah.
the idea that like how would you know if God has died, versus God was never there in that scenario. So it's like it's an interesting philosophical like quandary, I guess. But um I don't know. I think we're just kind of like evolved past it. There's like I think we're gonna have, yeah, it'll be interesting to see if there's any more like modern religions that come up past now. Um yeah. Jorge's trying to come to terms with the decline of decency in the US. Yeah, that's very true, man.
Well, that's the other thing actually I was going to say. Thank
Yeah.
you, Jorge, for saying that. Like, not the decency, that part I care very little of. But I think something because, like, when you say foundational, like, like religion, I mean, it was only important as much as my parents told me it was important, right? And that it was important within my social circles, right? And like understanding that, like, oh, now I'm forever outside, because I know my parents aren't going to change their mind, right? And then like most of my family members aren't going to change their mind. But like my parents not like we're like orthodox for anything, so they weren't going to shun me over this thing, right? I just was like, all right, well, I just need to like not discuss it, not debate with them. But like the thing that really got me, and so again, thank you, Jorge, for that. Is like understanding like what kind of country America truly is, actually. Like learning the history, learning all the things that we were lied to about, and that specifically I mean like our standing in the world, right? Like that America is that shining beacon on the hill, right? Shining city on the hill, that we are basically the good guys in all these conflicts. But then like you start learning, like if you really like put your mind into it, start learning about the different conflicts we've been involved, learning about how our extractive practices, learning how many people we hurt, like putting together the history of violence and that this country has almost entirely been at war, like through its entire history, right?
Mhm.
There's the wars that you remember, right? The few that you're taught in school, but then there's all the other military engagements. This apparently what we're doing right now is technically not a war. It wasn't declared to be a war. Trump is saying it's a military expedition. So
Yeah.
like
Although Trump has said we have won the war, that never happened though.
yeah, yeah, exactly, right. But no, like
Yes, there was.
America has a whole history of exactly that. It sounds like Trump is like, this is another one of his like unprecedented acts, right? But no, that's actually the norm, right? We don't declare war, but we do war constantly, like throughout history. It's rare when we're not involved in some military engagement somewhere. And like understanding like how much this country has truly hurt the world, right? And like coming to terms with that, like that was more foundational for me. That was hard to deal with, and it's still something I'm deconstructing now. So yeah, like in terms of like being like watching the war on terror happening, like I mean that was a big thing for me, like watching the war on terror happen and like how the US operated and how many people suffered and died by our hands. Yeah, that was a radicalizing moment for me. So
Mhm.
Yeah, as an outsider, outsider from a Canadian perspective, it has been interesting, and I'm also old enough to like to know pretty much whatever to remember September 11th, and I remember even the day when I was at school and all that stuff when that happened. I'm like, yeah, the war in Iraq and Afghanistan of like and how that was at the time. It's interesting looking back now of like those are clearly like I think almost universally looked at as like huge mistakes and missteps. Um, but then at the time, it's like at the time, a lot of the countries were like unified of like, no, these are things that must have been had to have been done. So yeah, also interesting the evolution and the retrospective.
Mhm. Yeah, man. I think it sucks. I mean, I think like every like the world before World War II was wild, and I feel like there's so much, um, and that's kind of like the amount of like, and after World War II, kind of like the world coming together and being like, yo, imperialism sucks. Like we have to like kind of come together, and we can't be just like going through and like we need to have like peace, and that's why Europe has had like a lot more peace, versus endless wars and because of treaties and working together. I feel like I don't think that the strongman idea of history and of and how like Trump views the world of like just whoever has the biggest military can just take whatever they want. I mean, going back to that, which is kind of like pre World War II mentality, I feel like that is just so dangerous, man. I think like it's just um, it's
but
so
Trump
frustrating.
Trump is just like being honest about how we've been operating this entire time, though, right? Like even post World War II. I mean, like look at Vietnam, look at Iraq and Afghanistan, look at like our various military like our the various powers throughout the world we've been like backing. Look at the Cold War, right? Like we were doing those things, right? Before we just put like a friendly face on it. Like we like the violence, like the death squads we funded in South America, little
Mhm.
death squads we funded, America funded and trained in South America, right? Like there's a place called the School of the Americas, and we trained death squads, and we set them down there. We set them down there after people who are trying to unionize, right, and to who are trying to um, organize their community and like have sovereign control of their own nation. Look what we did to Iran previously. Iran, like we saying, oh, we care so much about them having a choice. The people of Iran having a choice within their government, right? Well, I mean, they did have a choice. They had a president, right? They had, like they elected a democratic government. But that democratic government said, "Oh, maybe Iran should use these resources for Iran, right? First and foremost, right? Like make Iran great again." They tried to do that, but that didn't work for the U.S., didn't work for the British, and certainly didn't. Well, also didn't work for Israel. And so we got rid of that. We knocked that place over, knocked them over, put in a Shah, put in a dictator instead, right? And then that dictator got tossed out, and then we got the theocratic government, the evil theocratic government that we're dealing with now, right? Like that was a response to us knocking over the democratic elected president. And so, like, is what I'm saying is like there is no like. I think it would be a mistake to say, oh, well, World War II was some sort of breaking point. The only thing that changed is that like America became the undisputed top dog.
Mhm.
Um, and it got a lot more leeway from the rest of the world. It became the armory of democracy. They say, like the leader of the Western Hemisphere. But previously, like and afterwards, still just mass violence like across the globe, for our well mostly corporate interests. So again, like Trump is just like he's just being honest. He's just being like he poorly packages these things, but it's
Mhm.
the same thing. There's like not much of a difference here.
Mhm.
All valid points.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree, like with how awful the wars and everything that we've done from Vietnam to Korea to South America to all that stuff. That I think it is awful. There's like no excuse for it. I just feel like I guess it's just like a different type of like you don't have like England popping up colonies 100 different places all throughout the world.
We
Like
have
that
neo colonies, though,
imperialist.
right? We have neo colonies, right? Like
Uh,
Israel is a neo colony of America, and we have and like I was literally just reading an article about bases, right? Part of the Iran war. Iran just like tossed a nuke at this island. Not sorry, not a nuke. Sorry, but oh my god, why did I say nuke? Sorry, excuse me, not a nuke. Sorry, toss a missile, a continental ballistic missile at this island. Right, that was like 4,000 miles away, and like this is the first time they've done that. At least like well, at least in modern times. Interestingly enough, like the previous Shah, not Shah, Ayatollah. Yes, Ayatollah. That's the word I'm looking for. The previous Ayatollah, the one that we just killed, right? He had put a limit on how far their missiles could fly, right? He put a cap, I think it was 2,000 miles. This was 4,000 miles, right? It wasn't a technical issue that they couldn't solve. They just had it, but he specifically didn't want to antagonize the rest of the world. Well, now he's dead. We killed him. And in place is his son, who's a lot more aggressive. And so he fired at this base. This base, this island houses a U.S./UK base. And like I don't think it even hit, right? But the fact that it could have hit, right? That they have the missiles that can go that far, that's like the big thing, right? That's shaking up like the international community. Oh, they definitely do have these missiles, right? When we weren't sure previously. Anyway, the reason why I'm bringing this up is that like this place is part of this island chain, Moratorious, I think, something like that. But it's a very small island chain, and like the British had control of this, right? That was part of their like old colonial empire, right? But then they gave it back. But like still they wanted the base because it was strategically important. It's the middle of like the Indian Ocean. And so like but like now they have a treaty. It's a little complicated, but I'm just gonna flatten this a bit. They have a treaty to use the base. And that's what they're doing. But now that base is a target, right? But the people who are going to have to suffer are the nationals there, right? There's no like defensive. There's not even a defensive pact involved. The U.S. or the U.K. didn't say we're going to defend you, right? We just want to use this base. That's it, right? And so this is how they work now, right? Like they can still like use these lands, right? And you definitely use these lands to project force, right? To have bases to project force around the world, but that doesn't even mean they're going to protect you, right? You could still like your people can still just die. Um, but that's like the neo-colonial power. Like we don't actually have to hold territory. We'll have these agreements, right? Agreements that you kind of have to accept, or else there'll be consequences. And from there we can project force, or we can exploit your people, or we can do whatever. So yeah, it's slightly different, but it's just kind of easier to manage this way.
Yeah, and you can pack up and leave whenever you want, right?
Pack
Yeah.
up and leave whenever you want. Yeah. After polluting their territory,
Yeah.
like it's pretty bad.
Yeah, it is. I'm definitely not a fan of all the bases around the world and stuff like that. Yeah, I don't know. I think yeah, it's just the idea of Trump just going and um, saying we're just going to invade these countries, we're going to take this over, we're going to invade Cuba, we're going to invade Greenland, we're going to invade Venezuela. All these things. Like it just
And
harkens.
Canada.
Yeah, and Canada, like all this stuff. It's just I feel like maybe it's saber rattling. Maybe it's like
There's no
he's
saber rattle. He's
narcissistic.
doing it. I mean,
Exactly,
he's doing it. Yeah.
exactly. So I feel like um yeah, it just feels different. It feels very different than anything before, and it's just really frustrating to me. But anyway, sorry that was a fun conversation. But I just wanted we have a lot of stuff to get to. Okay. We might have a special guest coming on later, so I think maybe we can talk about the other stuff right now. Fluoride. So with all the um, basically states that ban fluoride are going to have more kids with cavities, and Medicaid costs are going to increase. So
You don't
they have,
need teeth, anyways. I think those are overrated.
yeah, yeah, it's crazy. I mean, oh my gosh. So this analysis found within 3 years, 132,000 additional children would need a cavity filled or tooth pulled, according to the analysis. 52,000 children beyond that would normally be expected to need such dental care. So it's like 3 times the amount of cavities than you normally would have, just by adding fluoride in the water. And then basically, this is going to increase medical costs for Medicaid, and then therefore basically everyone, for $40 million within 3 years. So it's just absolutely insane. The idea that we do so little for our public health, and we do so little for our healthcare in the United States, to have such a basic thing in the water that helps so many people, and keeps our healthcare costs down, keeps kids from getting cavities as much as they can, and states banning it, of course. Fluoride's good. Fluoride is very good. It decreases the healthcare costs. It decreases the amount of cavities, and the study shows that it's going to, by removing fluoride from the water, it's going to increase medical costs by $40 million over 3 years. So,
And like, yeah, again, it's, let's say, disheartening that this is still like, a controversial topic for some people. And like also like these experiments. And when I see these experiments have been run, it's like, well, let's say, bringing a Canadian perspective, there have been some cities in Canada that, like, they decided to, like, as a result of believing in this talking point, like fluoride, results in whatever, reduced IQ was one of the talking points, or affects development. And like I believe Calgary was one of the cities in Canada. Actually, like no, I think I have an article. 1 second. Yeah. So I'll post it in the chat. But pretty much, Calgary removed fluoride from its water supply, and a decade later, it's adding it back. As in, Calgary took fluoride out of its water supply in 2011, but it's reversing course. And this was published in 2024. As in, like, they ran this experiment for a decade, and city council member blah 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 explains why he voted to remove fluoride and why he would vote differently today, where it's like it didn't turn out all the way that they anticipated, in terms of like, well, yeah, pretty much preventing cavities and all that stuff, or increased rates of cavities and tooth decay. And so, I mean, yeah, none of this unfortunately surprised me, where I think you're just going to probably find out the hard way that this is not a good decision, and we have to replay these things over and over, or I guess metaphorically touch the stove multiple times to burn our hand.
It's tragedy of the commons, dude. This is political science. This is tragedy of the commons scenario 101, where you go to the park every day and the park is clean. Why are we giving a salary to someone to clean up clean park so we can, so you fire the groundskeeper and all of a sudden all this trash comes in the park, and now we're like, what happened? Why is all this trash there? Well, it's the groundskeeper that I was actually keeping it clean. So it's like, it's just, we are seeing that happen in our healthcare system.
Yeah. Uh, and so you're gonna run, I imagine, the same experiment as Calgary, and find out, a decade later, and you're gonna have to course correct and deal with the fallout. But like,
Yeah.
yeah, but it's, let's say, although dental care is, let's say, different and changing in Canada, so I guess it's not necessarily uh, a strain on our public healthcare system. Although, let's say, Canada is moving towards including more dental coverage in its public
Hmm.
healthcare plans, and so it's like, yeah, if dental care becomes universally part of our universal healthcare system, like that's going to cost us more to not have fluoridated water, just overall.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts, Prime?
Um, I think that like you know, so I trust the science that I've seen behind this, and the people who've discussed it. Um, but like you know, just like all our other health advances, like it's worked. It seems to have worked really well. Um, and like my understanding is that um or at least I've seen this in TV shows. If this is not true, well then someone can tell me otherwise, right? But the way they painted it in TV shows is that like if you've done like an autopsy, right, like of a person, let's say like it's only like bones left, right, and you're like trying to figure out like where this person come from, right? Um, like one way you can tell, like at least you try to get an idea about the region, is through their teeth. We use fluoridated water, and so like it shows up in our teeth, and our teeth are just like better and stronger than other places that don't have it.
Yep.
And so like you can just like examine that, like from a skeleton. It's like, oh yeah, they came probably from a Western nation, maybe, or a more advanced nation that fluoridates their water. Like they have better teeth, like more enamel or something. So if that's true, and hopefully I just didn't spot some BS, but if that's true, right, like then it's just like another example of like our health services just being fantastic. And like the results uh being like so ubiquitous and to be invisible. And this goes beyond like even health services. This is a big thing that that in general, right, for lots of government services. There's a book about this called The Submerged State, and it talks about how it's basically this like whole government structure, right? A whole government structure that affects all our lives all the time in a myriad of different ways, right? Sometimes through direct contact with the government, or sometimes through indirect contact, or sometimes like through private industry that's like being subsidized by the government. That the government is touching our lives and like making things easier in so many ways, but like people don't understand it and they don't register it, right?
Mhm.
And so they don't understand when it's being threatened. When a politician is saying, "Oh, we just need to cut this fat, and that'll be good for you," right? But you don't understand really how much that fat is, quote unquote, fat is important to you to your own very lives, right? And so you might vote to cut that, to get rid of that thing, right? And then when the results show up, you actually don't understand like why your life has gotten worse, why this service is gone, right? Why this maybe a private corporation that you relied on, right, has to shut down or like reduce operations in some way. because they're not getting those subsidies anymore. Like you don't get that because you don't have a full understanding of this, right? I think like now that I'm just like making this connection right now, like I think this is all the same thing, right? Like with the fluoride, with the vaccines, with
Mhm.
all these things, like they work so well and are so invisible to most people, they don't understand like how could they have it, right? And so they will work to dismantle the thing that has been providing them benefits the entire time, being none the wiser. So
Exactly.
Yeah,
I
uh,
think that it's a good point, and that's why the anti-fluoride, anti-vaccine, pro raw milk stuff is all packaged together in the United States right now through the states. It's they're all together.
yeah, I agree. I think that's good overall analysis as well. Like all of this massive apparatus, like public health, like it effectively like since it's so effective, it becomes like background noise or like white noise. You don't notice it until like something goes wrong, or like you actually have an outbreak of measles, or now you're going to have an increase in cavities and tooth decay, etc., etc. Like yeah, we and myself included, I think we largely take it for granted of like these systems and the effectiveness of public health in these governmental institutions, and that like as you said, pretty much like this whole silent apparatus that's like there working in the background, and it's it's effective. We have that evidence to like back it up, but like it's not salient in our minds until it's it's on fire.
Um, Let me exactly. I gotta give our special guest my phone real quick. But do you guys want to introduce the next topics while I do this real quick?
Sure,
The doula and the midwife one.
it was Prime's article, so I think he should.
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead, go for it.
sure. Okay. Um, yeah. I forget which exact article I sent. Um,
With the
uh,
doulas and the midwifery, and you linked a pretty in-depth, a fairly in-depth article, like going over the history and the challenges and things that go right and wrong.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I sent this article. It was an NBC News article. Hopefully our friend, when our friend returns, he can link it to you. But the title of the article is "When Home Births Go Wrong, Hospitals Can Add to the Complications." Yeah, okay, it's coming back to me because I sent this like at the very start of the week. But Yeah, so these births, these people want to have more control over their ability to give birth. And like we covered this in a previous discussion, a really interesting discussion of like a few weeks ago. Um, but there are women who, for various reasons, want to avoid like having babies in the hospital, and some of these reasons are quite legitimate, right? In our last stream, we're covering a lot of illegitimate stuff that was happening, but still, right? Like there's actually some like serious hurt, right? There's medical trauma that happens where either doctors don't listen to the patient and like do things to them that they don't consent to, or like they are like suffer some sort of medical injury, and some of these injuries can be quite debilitating, right? Or any case like they feel like a loss of control, um, and they want a more personalized experience, to bring their child into the world. So like there could be very legitimate reasons, very very legitimate reasons, not to want to go to a traditional hospital setting. And so people turn to midwives, right? And uh, like they're like midwives are great, especially when things are going right. You can have that wonderful birth at home, but there are portions that like can't be there are there are parts of um, the process, right, that can't be rectified, can't be addressed, right, when things go wrong. So we need a hospital setting, right? There are like emergencies that happened. Now, like midwives, like a good midwife will help screen you for these things, for these risk factors, and so try to avoid putting yourself in a situation where you need to go to the hospital, right? Like make sure you're the type of person who is most likely to be successful within a birth at home, right? They put you through like all kinds of tests beforehand, but still things happen in the birthing process. In any case, you got to move to a hospital facility, but to do that, right? Like you need the hospital to agree. You can just show up, right? And just like, go to the emergency room. But if you do that, and they can't turn you away by law, but if you do that, you might actually just be sitting in the emergency room where you need immediate uh, attention, right? And so it's better if like you could just call the hospital, let them know, right, that you're coming in, and then like they'll be ready to take you into their intensive care unit immediately. But some hospitals don't want to do that. They don't want to deal with midwives coming in, right? Some of the reasons for not wanting to help are legitimate. Some of them extremely illegitimate, in my mind. But in any case, they introduce a level of complication here. When like literally seconds, minutes, like all that time matters. And so this article was talking about like what those complications were, how we might be able to move past this, talking about the history of like midwives and like before hospitals, before our modern medical industry was a thing, like midwives were just how you did this, right? Like this was the way of making this happen. But once medicine got institutionalized, all of a sudden these women were told to be illegitimate, which I think is completely wrong. And they were told some of them, like literally in the article, it's like, yeah, some of them were accused of witchcraft, like it was like that, right? It's crazy. And a lot of these people, these midwives were black and brown, and that made it really easy for that to happen. Like this is like a history of racism within this very sphere. Being told that those people in general like are worthy, but like midwives have like their game like since like that time, right? Like they're like nurse midwives. There's a title for them somewhere in the article. I forget exactly what it is, but like like a certified nurse midwife, I think. So like a lot of them have like a lot of training, but even when they're trying to communicate with these doctors and let them know, okay, like, well, we need to take this patient in, right? They're telling them like what the issue is. Some of these doctors and nurses on the line that completely dismiss them, like, oh, do you actually know how to take a pulse or whatever the hell? Like, no, yeah, they do. Like, they understand that much, but they won't even take them seriously. And then like it'll be like a turf war that's happening, like when like a patient needs help. And so it's a lot of complication and a lot of like deep and hurtful history. Um, and and so like some sort of middle ground should be reached. Middle ground, especially that has the patient's best interest in mind, right? And that best interest may not always be to be within the hospital, because if like the mother feels awful and feels terrified of being there because again medical trauma happens, then maybe a hospital setting isn't the best place for them. But I'm sure we can solve this problem as a society as to how to have the best outcomes for the most people, right? Giving them the most options, and like reducing the levels of risk. That's my opinion.
Well, thank you, Prime. Thank you for introducing the article. And to introduce for the first time on stream ever, ladies and gentlemen, Mrs. Dr. G is joining us. She is a NICU nurse, DNP incoming. So this is a really good topic, I feel like, because she sees the other side of it, what happens when like these things like go wrong, right? And what happens. So I'm curious. And by the way, she is like the badass that all these women wish that they could be. Actually delivered 3 kids, all natural, no epidural. So she is the superwoman that they all wish they could be. So just Kristen, what do you think? What are your thoughts on that, like the articles and stuff? I guess we could take them in turn, like the midwife article talking about kind of like how hospital workers are kind of like treating these midwives when they call in and kind of like othering them a little bit. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I mean, I think we could go a lot of ways with this. And I definitely think, I mean, that was an awesome summary, Prime, because I do think that there's lots of reasons why people pick to go to birth centers over the hospital. The argument for the hospital for me every time is what other people in the chat have said. You never know when you're going to have an emergency. And when you do have one, you need help right now. And the amount of time it takes for somebody to call 911 and then for them to respond and for them to get you to the hospital, all of that is lost time. One of the things that I do in my career is I'm specially trained to carry out induced hypothermia, which is where we help the babies that are having HIE, which is when oxygen has been cut off to the brain. We'll do cooling for them. So we actually will cool the body and the brain, which reduces the brain metabolism and helps it recover from an injury. So home births are my bread and butter. And I don't say that because I like it, but we see this all the time. And then the othering that Dr. Greg was referring to is correct. It doesn't come without some merit. There is some reason why some of that happens. And a lot of what we see, when there has been an emergency that has caused a baby to have oxygen cut off to its brain for quite some time, is the response from the staff, which have varying degrees of education, since it's not as regulated as it should be. The response is underwhelming and ends up leading to a medical emergency. We've had people tell us that they were giving CPAP to a baby, continuous positive airway pressure, when they were using a type of device that has no free-flowing air at all. So they've essentially put a mask on top of the baby's face with no air or supplemental oxygen coming out at all. And they've told us that they were giving CPAP. So it's like, you actually in those situations are making it harder for the baby to breathe. Now the baby has to breathe against the force of your mask. So there's things like this that happen that we see when the baby gets to us. Just basic neonatal resuscitation not being followed. And there's really no excuse in the United States in 2026 for not all healthcare providers that assist babies that are going to be born, for them not to be trained in neonatal resuscitation. So there's a lack of regulation, which leads to really devastating results where, the mom and the baby or both could die. And we've seen it. But to be fair, I've also seen really rare and devastating results in a hospital setting as well. So I just think it can all be very complex and complicated. But a certified nurse midwife is a master's or doctorate trained healthcare provider. So that's somebody with a lot of education. And I would trust that sort of person. It's a little bit different when you're a doula. There's not all of that education, but that person may have wisdom and birth knowledge, but they don't have necessarily any training. And I think that a lot of people, when they have a distrust of medicine, could lean towards something like that, not understanding the difference between a certified nurse midwife and a doula. And unfortunately, some birth centers don't do a good job of explaining it. And it's not about the healthy delivery, it's about the emergency. You should be picking your healthcare provider based on what happens when something goes wrong, not what happens if everything goes right.
Yeah. My understanding with doulas is that like the point of a doula is not to or a trustworthy doula is not to help like manage the birth, but manage everything around it in terms of like dealing with the hospital or managing your insurance and like advocating for the patient, right? Like that's what they're supposed to be doing rather than helping the baby successfully come out. But I think everything you said was quite well said. Well, what are your thoughts in general, right? Like in terms of women who say that, like, they've suffered some level of trauma, that they have reason to be skeptical of, like, giving birth within a hospital. Like, do you think there is some way that we can deal with these things, that we can address them in a way that would be equitable?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I completely get the trauma. I've definitely taken care of moms who I'm there for the baby, but I've been to hundreds of births and I've seen these moms and I'm like, oh my gosh, this mom is experiencing trauma in this moment. And I hope I'll say to my coworkers, I hope she doesn't decide to do a home birth next time, right? Because her ideal birth has been taken away from her. And even if she comes out with a healthy baby, which is the ultimate goal, she is going to walk away feeling like that perfect birth experience was taken from her from one reason or another. And some of this is just a really basic misunderstanding of how much control she had to begin with. I think a lot of people feel like they can control. I've had even friends of mine, not just patients that I've cared for, but friends tell me, "Oh, I'm going to go in, I'm going to get an epidural. It's like all going to be great." And next thing they know, they have a precipitous delivery. There's no time for that. Baby comes out and they felt everything. And for them, that's trauma, right? So I've had people tell me like, "Oh, I'm 4 centimeters dilated, but they won't admit me to the hospital yet. They're making me pace around," things like that. So for them, that's trauma, right? They wanted, in their mind, their birth was going to go this way, and it went a different way. So I think people going into births need to have a better understanding of what is actually in their control, and what risk factors are, and what exactly the medical team can do to help you through these events, that can change very rapidly and quickly, and all of a sudden can feel like they're taking that perfect birth experience from you, but they're doing it in order to save your life. I mean, I've seen moms come in refusing an IV because it wasn't part of their birth plan. But it turns out they have a condition called preeclampsia. And next thing you know, they're having a full tonic clonic grand mal seizure. And we have to whisk the mom off to the ER. We do what we call a splash and slash. And with 8 minutes, that baby's born, right? That experience was robbed from that mom. But should she have decline the IV to begin with? Well, probably not. If you have preeclampsia with severe features and you are at risk of stroking out, I mean, she could have died and lost that husband. That that husband's face was telling me he got it in that moment, how close he was to losing both his wife and his baby. So these are things where I think with a little bit more of education, we can help people understand what it is that we're trying to do and how important it is, and how things can change so quickly. But there are birth centers that operate within hospitals now, which I think is really great. We have one of those here in San Diego, where if you are on paper a perfect pregnancy, right? No gestational diabetes, no preeclampsia. When your fluid breaks, like your water breaks, it's not green, right? It's like literally everything is perfect. You're measuring to date, all that stuff. Then you can go and have birth inside of the hospital's birth center. And then you're right inside, surrounded by all the most modern medical care. But if you don't need it, then you can have a tub birth and you can hold on to a 4-post king size bed, right, with your birth partner. And that's it. We're not even going to check you. Like, you can do your own thing. And then if something goes wrong, which it does all the time, then we are right there. And we can bring you down to the regular birth floor and you can have your baby there. So I see this quite a bit. There's been so many moms that were up on this birth floor, pushing, holding onto that 4-post bed, and then, okay, meconium fluid comes out. That lets us know that your baby's stressed out. If your baby inhales some of that fluid, it's very thick and sticky, and it can lead to both air leaks and collapsed lungs all at the same time. It's a syndrome called meconium aspiration syndrome, and it's another reason why you would come see me in the NICU. And we may even do induced hypothermia on you, because it could lead to oxygen deprivation in the brain as well. That hypoxic state that the baby's in that causes them to first release the meconium and then just swallow it, is a lead up to HIE.
So I love what you were saying at the end in terms of like providing a space um, for uh, for people to actually do this, like within some sort of hospital environment, right? Like even the article that I had sent was talking about that, like how there are like birthing centers within hospitals uh, that provide this level of service. But I think part of the problem, and this is not this is not an issue for, unfortunately, for our doctors or our nurses to solve, is funding, right? Like, can they afford to have this kind of center attached, right? Can they afford whatever liabilities? Because there might be additional liabilities that occur, if they don't have medical staff attending them, like every second, and like, do they have the floor space, do all kinds of things, right? And right, so there might be hospitals who provide that, but then they're being shuttered because I'm sure, as you know better than I, right, like hospitals across the country are being shuttered. And then on top of that, right, not only they're being shuttered because of lack of funding, they're also being consolidated under like these large groups, right? Some of them are like the Catholic Church. Some of them are other private industry, private entities. Private equity is buying them. And so anyway, there is a lack of choice. There's a degradation of care, and so like it would seem to me that like this very optional sounding solution, right, would be the first thing to get cut. Like, okay, well, they could just like go to the regular a labor floor, labor and delivery floor, right? Like, why should we have a separate thing for these individuals? Why give them a separate option? That certainly costs us more money, so let's cut it. Do you understand what
It's
I'm going with there?
unfortunate, but I do think that hospitals are required to pay attention to what patients want, and what patients want, first of all, is privacy. So whenever you go to the hospital and you get a survey sent home to you, one of the most popular ones is called the Press Ganey survey. Hospitals pay a lot of attention to the Press Ganey scores. So we will absolutely decide what sort of care we provide based on what people are complaining about on those scores, right? Because we won't get as much money from the consumer if we don't have happy consumers, right? So a lot of hospital upgrades when they go to build new buildings and new towers is completely based on what people want. So, for
But
example,
that
like
only matters,
private
but
rooms.
just very quickly, that only matters if there's choice, right? Like, if you are the only hospital, especially we're talking about more rural and suburban areas, right? If you're the only hospital in like a 30-mile, 40-mile radius, right? Because the other ones were shut down, well, then you don't have to really worry about that much anymore, right?
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, there's definitely a lack of access in rural communities. That's for sure. A lot of times we'll get, so I work at a high risk birth center, and we get moms that have come in from like 2 hours away because it's not safe for them to deliver where they live because there are not resources out there. And so, yeah, that happens a lot. And a lot of times babies that are born in these rural places have bad outcomes. That's just a fact. You're right. I mean, there's just not enough access everywhere in rural communities. And we, believe it or not, see it in San Diego. We see it in San Diego County. Not all parts of the county have good enough healthcare services. It's yeah, it's that's definitely a big problem for sure. But when you do have when you do have a hospital that has good services, they will, even on a regular birth floor, we're listening to what patients are asking for and putting in things like birth tubs and giving patients choices. If it's reasonable within the patient's diagnosis, we are giving them options. You don't have to lay on your back in the bed and have an epidural. You have a choice to have intermittent monitoring, and you can get up with no medication and walk around. You can be in your birth tub, for a while if you want to. So places that have this ability do give patients choices within a hospital. But you're right. I mean, there's large portions of the country that are just underserved. Absolutely.
Well, just like you were saying with San Diego, I'm a bit unfamiliar with that, but it sounds quite believable. I know in New York, many hospitals were closing a few years ago, and most of those were in black and brown areas. And so, like,
Yeah.
it they may have the people may still have like less trouble getting around because New York has a good public transportation system to get to those other hospitals, but still, right? Then, like in the case of any sort of emergency, there still is a barrier, right? The geographic distance becomes a barrier even within New York City, and this has been replicated around the country. So, like, yeah, I hear you on that. Something else I want to go back to though is what you talked about, saying that trauma can happen, but part of it is lack of education and knowing that like well, some procedures are necessary, right? And like you'll have less control than like in many other like common medical settings, right? Like medical operations that they've had in the past. Like this is different, right? And sometimes
Yes.
decisions need to be made. And so I think that's really valuable what you said.
Mhm.
And like I think uh, just like how patients should always be advocating for themselves, I think in the reverse is true that like we just need to be educating patients all the time about like what expectations um uh, they should have, right? Like setting expectations can like
Yeah.
avoid a lot of like misunderstandings. That being said,
Yeah.
there was another article, and I don't know if a friend Greg shared this one with you as well, um, but it featured um, like examples of things going badly, right? So I'll just read a small paragraph. Um, Many had previously had traumatic births in hospital. So this is talking about women who had gone through the process. Many had previously had traumatic births in hospital. The obstetrician gynecologist who delivered writer and birth worker Caitlin Pearl Coghill's second child in 2015 performed a membrane sweep, an internal procedure to induce labor without her consent. He subsequently lost his license for having a sexual relationship with a patient. Quote, he was a creep and he was abusive and it definitely felt like sexual assault. And like a membrane sweep, I've like looked it up and it's just like, involves like sticking your fingers in and like doing a maneuver inside of a
Yeah.
woman. And so, yeah, he did that thing without consent to her and she felt like violated. Now, this wasn't like, a form of medical like she wasn't debilitated by this, but still,
Mhm.
this awful, right? An awful experience for her, and she's using like words like sexual assault to describe it. And there's worse examples out there, but uh, like that's also another side of it, right? Like that there are doctors who either don't care, who maybe simply just have bad patient doctor interactions,
Yeah.
or just like have a bit of contempt for the individual under their care, right? And then on more serious cases, are literally bigoted against that population that they're taking care of,
Mhm.
right? Those are things that also happen, and so the people who suffer that are also more likely to want to explore alternative options.
Mhm. Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, if you had a medical procedure or you trusted the medical profession and then, you feel like they broke that trust and you had a negative outcome, I can completely understand why people would want to seek alternate treatment. But I think that there's a logical fallacy there because if you're now leaving the hospital or a regulated sort of birthing situation and you're going to go with someone that now lacks education, right, but they make you like feel more comfortable, I just don't feel like overall you're going to come out with a better outcome necessarily. I think it's all about finding somebody that empowers you. I can't imagine feeling like I had gone to the doctor to get a regular checkup for my baby and then feeling like I was a victim of assault. That would be awful. I hope I never have to experience that. And I can definitely see why somebody would now distrust, but I wouldn't suggest that somebody now leaves the medical field altogether and goes with a doula, for example, or somebody who doesn't have the same education. I don't think that that's a safe alternative. I think that that's
Well,
not
everyone agrees
at
here
all.
that like a doula is not a replacement, right? And like I was trying to
No,
state before, doulas aren't a like leave like a trustworthy doula shouldn't even pretend to be able to help you deliver, right? Like that's like
right.
not their
But
role.
that does happen. We do
Yeah, it
we do
does.
see that. Yes, a doula should be categorized as a birth support person. This is
Hmm.
somebody that you pay money to generally that can help you through the emotional part of it and can kind of help be your advocate.
Hmm.
They've probably been to hundreds, if not thousands, of births. So even though they lack a formal education in midwifery, they have knowledge and experience, and they can help you understand. Oh, if a good doula will help you understand why they're performing a procedure that you didn't expect to have performed on you. um, so like a vacuum extraction, for example. I was at a birth
Hmm.
just last week where this mom was unmedicated. She was doing fabulous. I think she must do cold plunges or hot yoga or something, because this woman was just breathing through the ring of fire. It was like she had an epidural. She was so calm and relaxed. I've never seen anything like it. I've had 3 unmedicated births myself, and let me just tell you, the ring of fire, whew, it is real. And she was just ready to roll. This woman was just stone faced, like, let's get through it. And she was in the ring of fire for about 2 hours, meaning that the head was crowning. You could see it come out, but no matter how much she pushed, it just was not
Hmm.
coming out. And it was just causing her to have more and more edema. The baby's head was having more and more edema. So now we're getting in a situation where it's actually getting unsafe, because her pushing is no longer effective. It's just causing it to get the baby's head to get stuck more. So we had to do what we call a vacuum extraction, where we put the vacuum on the top of the baby's head, apply suction, and as she pushes and as the uterus contracts, we pull. This worked. This woman had a doula with her who was wonderfully supportive, and explained this procedure to her as matter of fact as it could be. Was this vacuum part of this mom's birth plan? No. Was she in a state where she could really kind of make a sound medical choice? No. So she's relying on people around her to tell her that this is good for her. And it was. And that doula was great because she was right when you're in labor. You can't really, you need somebody to be in your face talking to you. So she was literally in her face, just like, you've got this, you can do it, we're going to do the vacuum, you're almost there. Like, it was beautiful. So to see situations like that, like, yeah, that doula was wonderful, because her husband passed out at one point. So we needed somebody close there.
uh, did
He
Greg
had,
manage to stay conscious during all the births?
True. Yes.
um,
Greg was good. He was upright for all of them.
Fantastic. He
Well, upright
accomplished
of
that
his own
much.
volition. On his.
Or someone holding him up, I guess.
I mean, so but people are at like, they talk about in the article a lot that it's like the United States has really bad mortality rates for women, right? And we are doing really poorly in that. So it's kind of like they're, incorrectly obviously thinking that they can like go better by themselves if so many people are losing their lives doing this, like how, taking some of the power back for themselves kind of thing. And that's what the women at least talked about in it, with the doulas and the midwifery and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, it is interesting how like throughout the world, like doulas, there was like 65% of people in Denmark and stuff had doulas and stuff like that. So it's like kind of like, I guess like, could you talk about kind of like what are the causes of the United States having such high mortality rates, and like how these things are going to impact like home births and stuff like that are going to impact that?
I certainly don't know all the causes of the increased maternal mortality rates. I do know that as a nation, we are a lot sicker. So we are moms these days are able to have babies. They never would have been able to get pregnant before. We're having lots of moms that have illnesses that we have to support, and they end up being very, very sick, and the pregnancy causes them to be very, very sick. So I do think that that contributes too. It's just like our overall health as a nation, that feeds into like our maternal mortality. And then I do think what you were talking about earlier, like, what did you say? It was the problem of the commons.
Tragedy of the Commons, yeah.
Where, yes, tragedy of the commons, where we take for granted how great our healthcare system is or was, and we decide, oh, okay, well, I feel very, very safe, like I'm gonna deliver at home, not realizing that it was, you know, modern medicine that has made our mortality rate go down. Therefore, it's, you know, that's what we should be doing. We can't go back to what was causing all these women to die in the first place. I think that's contributing as well. And then, you know, of course, the maternal mortality rates are much higher in people of color. That's a huge portion of what's going on. And so that's something that needs to be fixed as well. I mean, we talked about this last time this topic came up when we were talking about the Free Birth Society. But this is definitely a well-known big issue where there's a big, it's a big problem for sure that needs to be addressed. So how to address it, I'm not sure. I did read a really interesting article about a birth center that was run by women of color for women of color that was helping them get through their distrust of medicine. I thought that was really beautiful. I still have my same concerns about proximity to, you know, like in escalation of care if the mom or the baby needed it. I think those concerns still persist for me. But I'm happy that we're trying to make strides. And I do know that there's lots of education being given to healthcare providers, because I have to take this education more than annually, that help me understand, you know, implicit bias and just making sure that we are trying to fix the lack of equality in medicine. We are very well aware of it. We do study it.
Yeah, it seems like it's just like an access problem, right? Like the healthcare that we do have in the United States is good if you have the access. So having like a doula that could guide you into getting, you know, your vitamin supplements or what you need to be eating correctly, stay away from cold meats, you know, that, you know, like things that you wouldn't normally like think about, but that is actually like kind of all culminates into, you know, a series of small decisions that have a big impact at the end there. And I think that, so having like a doula in that case, you know, and so if the insurance,
as long as they're giving you the correct information, because
yes.
Because I'll tell you what, I mean, I was already a NICU nurse when Dr. Greg and I had our first baby, but and I had, you know, taken L&D classes. I felt pretty well versed, but I wanted Dr. Greg and I to do parenting classes together. So we went to some that were sponsored by the hospital that I worked at the time. So it has the name of the hospital attached to it. And this woman stood in front of the room. She was a doula. That was her. She didn't have formal education as a midwife, but she was a professional doula and had attended thousands of births, helped thousands of women. She stood up there with the logo of the hospital behind her and told people not to get the vitamin K vaccine and the erythromycin ointment. And I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And before that had happened, I had mentioned to her that I was an employee of the hospital and I worked in the NICU. And I could not believe the amount of hatred that she had towards, she had her very obvious distrust of medicine, from down to the way that we swaddle the babies. I mean, she just did not trust us. So, but I did find it was interesting that she shared that her own child didn't want her near her baby for the first 2 weeks of life. So maybe they were planning on getting some vaccines done in that amount of time.
Interesting. I wanted to share, and I shared this with Dr. Greg and Corey previously, the last time we discussed this, that my cousin, wonderful woman, certified nurse, she almost died during childbirth. I mean, she was going through the process and she sensed something was wrong, and she tried to express that to her care team, and they didn't believe her, and they ignored her, and they kept ignoring her until she was finally forcefully got them to address the issue that she was going through. I don't know exactly what it was, so I can't tell you. But they realized, oh, sounds like she knows what she's talking about. They rushed her into surgery, and and later on it was said that if they had waited a few minutes longer, she would have died.
Mhm.
Um, like, so this happens to individuals who have like the most amount of preparation. You're like yourself. This person has a deep understanding, and can communicate that to her care team, right? Like in words that they will understand, right? Not just like vague feelings, words that they understand. And still, she was ignored. Um,
Yeah.
and so like it's like, what hope can we have for people with far who have so many other barriers. One barrier in education, or like I think the article that you might have read also said was like a barrier in language, right? There's many people who have a huge language barrier, and them trying to communicate to their doctors, maybe being ignored when clearly this person's in distress. Maybe we're not going to bother trying to figure out what it is because it's not immediately apparent, and they suffer for it. Like that's like a huge issue.
I agree. And I mean, I've been fortunate enough to work with really wonderful, supportive team members that I could not imagine them ever just blatantly ignoring somebody, especially when that person, has a little bit of a background, so they would be able to explain a little bit better what's going on, have a better understanding. I've seen things in my career that have come from healthcare staff that I never want to see again. Like we all have encountered these people in our own experiences in the medical field, where I'm like, I cannot believe that you are employed here. You shouldn't work here. But those things they're much smaller than the people that do care. I mean, these doctors devote their entire lives to this practice, and most of them are just incredibly caring, educated people that legitimately want their patients to get better. It makes them feel good, right? Like when you get that like adrenaline rush, like I do anyway, when like you've performed this procedure and the baby gets better, right? Like I intubate babies as an advanced life support nurse. That's something that I do. That's why I'm at these deliveries that I'm talking about. I'm there if the baby needs to be coded, like compressions, if we need to do some CPAP or PPV, if I need to intubate, that's my role, and I jump right into it. And there's nothing like the feeling when you followed the neonatal resuscitation and it pays off. Like it feels so good. I love my job. It's so rewarding. So yes, I do it for the money, but let's say somebody offered me a job that pays more, like I would miss it. I really love what I do. I know that most people that comprise the medical field feel the same way about that. But of course, I mean, yeah, there's assholes everywhere, right? Like at any field you go to, there's going to be people that don't care about their job, and they don't put the time in, and it makes everyone else look bad. It makes there be a distrust in medicine. And I think it's really hard when people come in that haven't been burned yet, or they've heard stories from other people, and so they have a distrust just from stories that they've heard, and they come in already not trusting us. We get that all the time.
And it's
and that's really
Instagram, like just good story after good story of just like, oh wow, this never happens bad, and you're like, oh my gosh. And someone in chat was like, oh my gosh, I know 4 people that have had perfect births. So it's like, dude, that doesn't mean anything. The 5th one could be the one where you both die, like legitimately. It's like,
yes. And exactly. I mean, and that's the thing about, like, we've talked about this before, but that's the thing about home birth, where it's like, yes, sure, everything could be fine, but it doesn't mean it was a good idea to do that, because it's the time where it goes wrong. And would you be willing, like, what if you knew going into it, that it was going to be a bad outcome? Would you still pick that?
Exactly. That's a really good hypothetical. Like if you knew going at that fifth kid, if that they're going to be permanently brain damaged, would you still go forward with that home birth? I mean, that'd be psychotic to say yes. I mean, I mean, but
Well,
I think people go into those situations with the assumption you go into it with the assumption that it's going to be okay. And I think people need to go into it wondering what's going to happen if this happens, you know? If this, then what? That's how we should be making these choices. So I do think that we are asking people to put a lot of trust into medical providers. Like, our lives are literally in their hands. So, you know, were they top of their class? Like, did they really want to do this? Did their parents push them into medicine? Do they hate this? Have they had a bad outcome before? All of these things go through your head, and when you hear stories of things that haven't gone well, it sticks in your head too. I mean, I've been a NICU nurse for 11 full years, and I have seen so many things where now, okay, that's just cooking in the back of my head. And I had that in the back of my head when I was pregnant with a baby. I'm like, oh no, am I going to have this weird disorder? You know, is the baby going to get stuck on its way out? And now my baby's going to need to have induced hypothermia. All these things are just brewing in the back of our head, and we have to put trust in the healthcare team. And it's really awful when you hear stories like this, where it's like, okay, you know, my family member is a nurse and they didn't even listen to her, and she was right, you know? So I don't know. I don't have great answers on how to fix it. I can just sympathize and try to help people understand that most of us really enjoy what we do, and we are going to take great care of you. Every baby I take care of, it's like they're my own.
And if you want to say it, sort of like on that note of people, I guess, not trusting the medical establishment, or rather, like, so, you know, as mentioned in some of the articles, like, there's this increase in people choosing home births. Do you view that, if you want to say, of like, that is the result of the spread of misinformation, as in like sowing distrust in the medical establishment, or is this like a reflection of the medical system, of like it's not meeting patient demand, or like the conditions in hospitals, or there's not enough hospitals around, or a combination of both, or like something else, if you want to say?
I think it's medical distrust, in my opinion, and I think it's people not understanding how truly bad things can get if they do get bad. You only have, I mean, like, hold your breath right now. How long can you make it without breathing before you need to take another breath? Picture that being your baby, right? Like, let's say your uterus just detached or just opened up and ruptured, and now you're bleeding out internally and your baby is just swimming in that, right? You know how long it even takes? Like, it takes sometimes a minute or two for a really skilled, trained healthcare provider in a hospital setting to realize that the uterus just ruptured, right? So you already have a little bit of downtime when you're in a hospital bed. So imagine that in a home birth setting. And a lot of these women that are trying to reclaim their perfect birth experience are having what we call VBACs, or vaginal birth after cesarean. So these women, for whatever reason, had a C-section in a hospital, and it wasn't their perfect birth plan. Things got out of hand for them, and they felt like they lost their power, and they want to now have a birth that's more in their control. So they listen to a doula, because most midwives and OBs would not recommend a home birth after a cesarean section because of the high risk of uterine rupture. So they're going to go to someone who will yes them, and that's generally somebody with less medical education. So then they have this VBAC, and the number one cause of concern there is uterine rupture. You will have no time. You might be okay, but your baby is going to come out brain dead, if they're alive at all. And that's what we are concerned about when we say, okay, the people are losing trust in the medical system, and now they're going to go have a birth at home. Like, this is exactly what we worry about for them. And I have taken care of that exact patient before.
When you know, at the very start, you talked about a lack of regulation in this field, and I would agree. I think that's what a big part of the issue is that a lack of education, lack of standards. I mean, people understand like a doctor and have like a general idea as to what to expect with a doctor, but like, you know, births are, you know, an extraordinary medical event, right? Like, you don't you're not growing up like, you know, as a woman having births, right? So like you when you encounter this event, right? Like you have less of an idea as to what to expect, and there's less education about like what to expect. And so like when I consider like how do we tackle this, one, I would think, a lot of regulation would be helpful here. That we provide some sort of national standards, right? Like making clear like this is the level of educational attainment that a midwife should have, right? Some sort of licensure program that's like nationally recognized, um, and it would also help putting money behind those programs. But then from there, right, an education campaign, right? Because all the public understands doctors, the mean understand midwives. So like if we're going to have them part of this process at all, like educate the public, make it very clear as to what to expect, as to where to go, as to like what information should they be able to trust, right? And certainly don't trust anyone who's a doula who's telling you like, oh, I can like help you give birth, right? Because that shouldn't be a mistake they're making, but it's a mistake that's happening. Um, but
Yeah.
at the same time, right? So like that's what I would put forth um, solution, at least the start to solution at the very least. But at the same time, regulation can go the other way, right? And so we saw this in the article that I think you read with transfer agreements. So like in some of these states, it's like, well, you to open up like a birth center, you have to have a transfer agreement with a hospital, right? Like some sort of certified hospital that can provide a certain level of care, so that if anything goes wrong, you can transfer in. I happen to be quite familiar with transfer agreements. I had to deal with them in a previous life, unfortunately. But like that sounds certainly reasonable, and like that makes sense. But that can be a way of locking these alternative solutions out, because if we don't like require some hospital to actually sign a transfer agreement, and then the birthing centers can't find anyone to voluntarily be a part of a transfer agreement, well then all of a sudden that option is actually imaginary. We see this as well in another setting, right? In abortion care, states have required these transfer agreements. They say, well, you got to, in case something goes wrong, right? You got to have these transfer agreements. But then no hospital will touch it because their state is like hostile to abortion care. And so basically, well, you don't have an abortion center. You can't have one.
Yeah.
No transfer agreement. And so like, I'm not actually asking you to say anything if you don't want to, but I'm just like putting forth that when we talk about regulation, there's a lot of good to be had there in terms of like national standards, right? But even then, we need to think about these things because just as easily, regulations could be a way to lock these other options out, right? In the end, just
Right.
like be denying people.
Yeah. I mean, I can tell you because I work so closely in my role in advanced life support with the Children's Hospital Emergency Transport Team that carries out these transfer agreements, that a lot of the birth centers surrounding our level 4 NICU, which is the highest level of care. It goes the opposite with trauma, but so NICU level 4 is the highest. These birth centers are shutting down. They're open for a good while until something devastating happens and they aren't able to defend how they provided recovery efforts to the baby, and then they close. And it just takes one big event and God forbid lots of smaller ones before that happens. But I do so midwives are regulated. They are nurse practitioners. Um, they can have either a master's or a doctorate degree. That is right now up to the individual. The regulatory body has been saying for 10 plus years that they're going to require all nurse practitioners, midwife or not, to get a doctor of nursing practice. That's what I'm going to school for right now. So I'll be a doctor of neonatal nursing practice. but at the moment they haven't enforced that. So you can have a master's degree or a doctorate degree. Just like if you are a registered nurse, you could have two different degrees. You could have an
Mm,
associate's or a bachelor's degree. But the thing
mm,
is that hospitals themselves are choosing to start to only hire the bachelor trained nurses. So they're pushing everybody in that direction. So I expect everyone will get pushed in the direction of more education as well, as far as nurse practitioners go. So I think that a midwife is an excellent option. I just would steer people away from only giving birth with a doula. But I do think
mm,
that the more highly regulated birth centers get, the closer to becoming like a hospital delivery center that they'll get, with the big fault being the delay in the onset of the emergency and the ability to receive treatment, and that is the biggest thing for me, in my opinion. So I think if you do have access to pick a care center, you want to pick somewhere where you can be in control of the birth experience within the walls of a modern hospital, and just work with somebody who's willing to listen to you but understand that things may happen. Um, Everyone has their own little things in their pregnancy. If there's a complication, really explore the risks and the pathways and the algorithms with your care provider so that they can talk to you about risks and things. But some things happen unexpected to the mom, right? But like
mm,
something that a provider who is knowledgeable is prepared to handle, and it may be faster than something that you have prepared for.
mhm,
There's an influencer that I really like named Jen Hamilton, and she just published a book called Birth Vibes that talks exactly about this. And it's trying to help moms who are feeling like they're grieving the loss of the perfect pregnancy or the perfect birth. Even if they had a perfect baby, they didn't get to have the birth experience that they wanted, and they're mad about it. So, this is trying to empower new and pregnant moms to understand these different pathways and how much control you really have. And when I talk to pregnant mommies, patients, or friends of mine, I always try to emphasize that this birth process is really great practice for what parenting is going to be like. Because again, you have no control. It is whatever
mm,
the situation will be. You might decide you're going to take your 2-year-old to the zoo and you're spending the entire time at the zoo just picking them up off the ground, tantruming. That's a lot what giving birth can feel like. Just something that's completely out of your hands and went the opposite way than you thought it would. But um, I do, yeah, I do worry that I think everything should be regulated because I want the best outcome, and that means more knowledge, but from your medical providers, but it also means more trust from the patient. So yes, I think like grassroots education can hopefully help with that. But I do think that the closer birth centers become to being hospitals, if we haven't fixed the distrust, it's just going to push more people towards home births and doulas, which is the most dangerous thing.
Uh, I
agreed.
find I find this aspect of being robbed of a perfect birth super interesting. So like, well, one, I'm not a parent, so, but I'm curious in terms of like one of the talking points that I hear is like when someone when a woman is pregnant and like someone asks like, oh, do you know the gender, or like one of the talk, or let's say a response is common of like, well, I don't really care whether it's boy or girl, just like as long as it's a a happy and healthy like baby, as in like to focus on like the outcome. As long as I deliver a happy and healthy baby, I don't really care like what the overall process is or like even what the gender of the child is. And so I'm curious, like, where do you view, if you want to say, of like where is this expectation coming from of like having this perfect birth? Because it's like again, that's sort of like interesting to me. Of like, well, why would you have that expectation for something that like,
Yeah.
again, I'm not a parent, but like that's like a totally uncontrollable environment from what I understand, or that would be sort of like
Yeah.
my expectation.
I mean, just like I think nobody who is getting married plans on getting divorced. I don't think anybody who's getting pregnant plans on a loss, or they don't plan on having a baby that's born with a congenital anomaly that impairs their ability to live a normal life. Nobody plans for that. But that's what I do all day long is work with families who that has become their reality. And a lot of them have had great prenatal care. So they have understood for a long time before the baby was born that X, Y, and Z was going to happen after birth. So we can kind of make contingency plans and prepare them and help connect them with specialists and support groups. But a lot of that grieving happens after the baby's born. Thank goodness, even babies that have profound disabilities come out so cute in the beginning. And so it really helps bonding, I feel like. But it's really hard to watch a mom who had great prenatal care, including routine ultrasounds and genetic workups, have a baby be born with a profound medical diagnosis that she was not expecting, and that does happen. So, or the other thing is that she did have a normal, healthy pregnancy, but then there was a traumatic birth event that now the baby has something wrong with it related to the birth process, like when the oxygen's cut off to the brain, and now they have HIE, and they may have some delays and disabilities related to that time that the baby spent down without oxygen to the brain. So there's different things that can happen that it's hard to prepare for, but I mean, even the people that have known the whole time they were pregnant, can you really ever be prepared for the amount of work that it would require? Like, do you live on a first floor house like entry where you can have a ventilator and in your living room to support your baby, because that's the only way that you're going to be able to bring your baby home? You know, you have insurance that will help cover full-time around-the-clock nursing care. Do you know how to use a G-tube pump? You know, we can teach you how to do all this stuff, and we can help provide you with resources and things, but there's a lot that these parents are going to have to learn how to do that they had no idea when they decided to get married and get pregnant that they were gonna have to deal with. You know, and when I say that, I'm talking about especially the planned, right, where it's like, yes, I can't wait. We've been trying. You know, we're gonna have this baby, and then we have this baby that doesn't look anything like what you thought in your head it was going to look like, and it may never live a normal life, right? That's a really small percentage, but this is what I mean when I say, you know, coming to terms with not having the perfect pregnancy.
Yeah, for sure. I can totally, or rather, I think I can understand. Like, there's almost certainly like a grieving process, or like a totally complex process occurring there. But then also, do you know if it also happens of like this aspect of a perfect, you know, birth or pregnancy, of like some women have the expectation that like, or it's like it's a total letdown that, you know, they have, let's say, for example, a cesarean section or a C-section. Like they expect like the birth, you know, a traditional vaginal birth, but like they view that as a loss of a perfect pregnancy, of like just not having the process happen the way that they expected to happen, as opposed to the outcome. Yes. Obviously. And
exactly.
where do you think, do you have any thoughts on like where that comes from? Like, you know, is that driven by like misinformation, or like for the reason that just like there's like this implicit expectation that prospective mothers have of like, you know, they're gonna have, you know, the wonderful delivery process?
Yeah, I think it just comes from a misunderstanding of the amount of control that you actually have over things. Because yes, I think most women, of course, can't speak for everybody, but I would say most women in this country picture themselves rolling in, their water broke, just like it happened on TV. And then they're going to get an epidural. They're going to be, you know, finding the right, you know, thing on TV while they wait to feel contractions, you know, and that whole thing. And that does happen. And we take care of lots of mommies where the nurse has to go in and let them know, oh, you're having a contraction, you know. But it doesn't always happen that way. You know, people can not take too well to the labor, and the contractions, it turns out, are overwhelming for them. Everyone has their own threshold of pain tolerance and things that they're able to handle. And even the very beginning contractions that let you know that you're in labor are too much, and they want an epidural now. And the doctor says, oh, actually, like, we're not even going to admit you right now. Like, you're not even dilated enough for that. So that's like, wait, what? Like, I have to live in this pain for X amount of time? I wasn't prepared for this. I wanted my epidural, right? So just not understanding like what it's actually going to feel like, or how what this process is going to look like. I think a lot of people have something in their head, and when it's not exactly that, right, then they're it's changed their whole concept. And I think a big part of that is pain, right? Because we are trained to think pain bad. And when you're having overwhelming pain, you think something's wrong. You can get into a state of panic, and you can feel like things are emergent. Why isn't everybody taking this seriously? I'm in pain, right? But this childbirth pain, at least the contraction part of it specifically, is not bad. It hurts, but there's things that you can do to kind of relax yourself and breathe through it and accept that this is what your body's meant to do. And of course, I'm only speaking to when this is like a healthy, situation with normal contractions, right? Because you should be listening to your body. If something doesn't feel right, you should speak up. But let's assume that everything's going according to plan, right? Yeah, it sucks, but you gotta, you gotta breathe through. You gotta be ready. And I just think some people have not prepared themselves for what that situation may be like, or to how precipitous their delivery may be, and there just is not time for an epidural. And then now they're in a situation where they feel fully unprepared to have an unmedicated delivery because it was not their plan, or something went wrong. They tried so hard. Some of these women, they'll be in labor for something like 24 hours, doing such a great job, pushing for a full 4 hours. But the cord might be wrapped in such a way that it will not allow the baby to descend further, or the baby's just too big and it won't allow them to go down. So despite this woman's best efforts, she's doing everything right. She has to have a C-section in order to have this baby. It's just not going to work. And I see that quite a bit. And so now this mom has had both a vaginal delivery, right? Because she's gotten fully dilated and pushed for hours, and she has to have a cesarean section. So I think, people walk away exhausted and some of them traumatized. I think some of them roll with it and they get that that's the way it was, that they had everything came out okay. And I think some people walk away feeling like, they didn't talk to me enough about that C-section. I don't understand why that had to happen. So yeah, maybe it's a communication thing as well. Not so much, maybe a little bit of distrust, but just some lack of communication and really what was going on. And the other thing important to remember when you were in that situation, and I've been in that situation myself before, you were really not able to do a whole lot of really clear thinking. And so I think having great support people with you is really important too, because you're making important medical decisions, or you're listening to what the providers are telling you, but you might really not be able to understand with the state that you are in.
I think.
Go ahead.
You go first.
I'll be quick. So yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of complex psychological processes occurring there, and like sort of going back to this aspect of what you said of like, at the end of the day, no matter what, there's only so much you can control over these events, and ultimately you have no control. And I'm curious if you want to say, or if you have experience of like, does it happen of let's say a mother like has the expectation of having the perfect birth, but then doesn't go as planned, and like do they like feel guilty, as in like they have this cesarean section and they feel like they feel guilty because they feel like they've done something wrong, like it must be on them, even though they have no control of
they failed.
Yeah. Is that sort of a common experience?
That's mother's guilt. Yeah, mother's guilt starts in pregnancy and it never ends. I just got a call today from my son's school that something's gone on at school with him, and immediately I take it in as my fault. Like, oh, how have I failed my son? That I'm getting a call home from his school. It doesn't. Yeah, it starts in pregnancy, and absolutely. So I know this because I feel it. And so I always just try to tell the moms, when I've gone to their C-section, I've finished providing recovery care for the baby and I'm going to leave now. The baby stays with the mom. I am always just saying to them, like, you did such a great job, because they need to hear that they did right by their baby. Because a lot of these moms did not want this C-section, but that's the only way this baby's going to come out, right? You just have to let them know that that's what it is. And it just kind of help these women through it and give them grace.
I wrote down a few things that you said. You're saying all kinds of interesting things, so I'm really appreciative of your time here. What this sounds like, with everything you said, like this needs to be part of not just like part of like health education. Like, I think we need like a whole class like that we put not just girls through like in high school. Like, I think we should put boys to this as well, so that when they are fathers, when they're supporting their partner, that they have an understanding of this as well. Like, it seems like there's just a whole list of things like you're saying it go wrong can go wrong, these complications that like I feel like this is just like a module at best within like sex education class, right?
Yeah.
But like everything, I mean, you keep like bringing up new interesting things here, and I'm like, well, like how would I be prepared for this? Like, I'm not prepared for. I think I'm a pretty educated person, but like if you were to throw me in this situation as like a father right now, like there'd be a lot like I'd be missing at this point. And for some of the
Yeah.
other people
And we
who
haven't even got into breastfeeding yet because there's 27,000 more things that can go wrong when you try to do that.
exactly right, and so like I love when you brought it up earlier about expectations set by media. You know, like
Yeah.
yes, you can watch some sort of like a Grey's Anatomy type show, and they'll show you like problematic births, but even then, it's something that can be wrapped up in a short amount of time. And like there's like an A story and a B story, so you're like bouncing back between those two things, right? In the end, like
Yeah.
the brilliant doctor team, like they solve it, or they manage it in some easy way, right? Like when it, as you very well know, like it's life is just so much more messier than that. And so the what people see, if that's like their main experience, right? This is their main education. It was my main education, honestly, right? Um, uh, like with the whole process, then that's what they'll expect. And they
Right.
don't know otherwise. So yeah, I think literally of like a class, like just a standard class that everyone has to go through to understand what this
Mhm.
process looks like, since so many of them will have to deal with it. I think it's definitely worth our time. Um,
Yeah.
but and then on top of that, I really like what you said about the grief process and like framing it as grief for like not a child who has died. I mean, there's that as well, but like a child that has
Mhm.
lived. But like things didn't go according to plan. And now you're with a child who has some sort of disastrous health outcome. And like now this is your reality. You got to deal with it, right? And you talk about how you're training these individuals to handle that. And like I think that's just like so important. Like in a really like great way for people to understand like what they're going to have to go through. Like I don't even know how you present this to people, right? Like I guess it'd be part of the class that I'm talking about, but like you, I also wouldn't want to scare people because like you said, like this is quite rare, but like it happens,
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I know but yeah, talk about things you don't prepare for because we do talk about in sex ed classes STDs, right?
mhm.
Herpes being one of the main ones and stuff. But just fun fact, I was just listening to a podcast the other day, and the host was like, "Oh, herpes is no big deal. Everybody has it." Okay, but did you know that if you have an active outbreak, you cannot
Mhm.
have a vaginal birth?
Mhm.
That
Mhm.
would be an indication for a C-section because you can
Mhm.
have herpes encephalitis. Herpes can actually cause your brain cells to lyse.
Twice
Just another small
Uh,
thing. So
break open, burst.
yeah,
That's a
burst.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
burst.
yeah,
Okay.
first, yes. So that would
Didn't
be
understand.
a permanent delay, cognitive issues and delays. So it's just one of those small things wrapping it into sex education. Yeah, sometimes STDs are actually a very big deal when now you're pregnant and having a baby and might change the course of your perfect birth plan.
I'm curious actually now that I think about this, like wrapping this up in a class, whether we could get buy-in from uh conservatives who are pro-life, because like I mean their goal is to have people have children, right? But they also don't like sex education because they don't want people to know anything about that process. But would they want people to know what, like now that they made the decision, they had the baby's coming, right? What to expect, I'm just like, it's just off the top of my head. I'm just wondering if we could actually get buy-in
Yeah.
from pro-lifers on this one. That's like
They
a
don't care.
dice roll, depending on how they look
Yeah,
at
that's
that.
the craziest thing, dude. I mean, that if they cared, they would be putting money in towards um, education, like what you're talking about, or all these abstinence only classes that they push that are complete failures. Like also like maternal care, like making sure that vitamins and supplements and everything is given. They could be doing like so much, and this isn't even, yeah, exactly, yeah, Helen, exactly right, this isn't even including childcare after the baby's born. But like, if they actually did care, to try to decrease maternal mortality rates, there's so much in the United States that's lacking. I mean, a lot of this education does, like Kristen was talking about, we went to, they're hosted through the hospitals sometimes, so that's like the place that you can usually go. They'll take you in and kind of like show you on a tour, kind of like where you park, what you do, what's going on. But that's kind of like a day of, but they usually have like seminars and stuff that you can go to, kind of like bigger picture stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely geared toward the pregnant parent. And it's a lot about the layout of the hospital and what to expect from the hospital. But yeah, you're right. I mean, there are parenting classes that are sponsored in the community. I would think most communities have something, especially through hospitals with delivery centers, or university hospitals. I would imagine would do things like that. I know we have really good programs like that here in San Diego, but like I said, you still have to be careful who's hosting them. I remember when I was starting in the NICU, it was probably like 15 years ago, when I was a unit clerk in the NICU, so not even a nurse yet. I was in going to nursing school. We had our very first mom decline eyes and thighs, and we did not know what to do. We did not have, you don't have to have consent from the parent to give it, which is what was really messing with us, because
What is
we
that?
all were
Did
like,
you
well,
explain that?
yes. So the vitamin K injection, it's an important part of the clotting cascade that is missing when you're newborn. You get it from microbes in your gut, but when you're born, your gut is sterile, so you don't have them, right? I know, yeah. Dr. Greg loves this one. So you need vitamin K. It's produced as a byproduct from the microbes in your gut after they eat fiber. But when you don't have that part, we were finding, right, this is all part of the healthcare that we take for granted. Babies were bleeding out, having brain bleeds. We fixed it by introducing this important part of the clotting cascade early. You don't start picking up on that until about the 8th day of life, naturally, but you could go home, leave the hospital, and get into a car accident, or something could happen on the way home, or in the first week of life. And again, the process only begins at 8 days. It's not fully finished by the 8th day of life. So we give vitamin K injections. It is not a vaccine, but it is essential. And this mother was declining it, and she was also declining the erythromycin ointment, which helps prevent blindness, for things, different bacteria that the baby could come in contact with when they exit the birth canal. Again, it's an antibiotic, right, that we're putting on, not a vaccine, but it's preventative and prevents. So it was my job as a unit clerk that day to come up with a declination form for something we didn't even need consent for. And that was my first exposure to this 15 years ago. And now it's gotten to the point where we have to ask moms and dads. We don't have to have legal consent for, but we now have to ask moms and dads, are you okay with what we call eyes and thighs? Because when we just administer them now without asking, people get so angry with us, they escalate it to the head of medicine at the hospital. So we're kind of dumbfounded because there's really good published literature that's come out recently showing that otherwise healthy, normal newborns who are born are now again dying of brain bleeds because parents are declining the vitamin K vaccine. So we can't figure that out, but at some point that got lumped in with vaccine hesitancy. And it is actually my hill to die on. I will do my best to convince the NICU admitted family to do vitamin K. Oh, I have a little Levy that's still awake here. So
You want some vitamin K, I'm sure.
My time. Yes. Yeah. I've got a little Levy, so.
Have a good one. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Well, thank you, Kristen. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you guys so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's great.
Pleasure.
I try to
Thank
do
you
the
for your
Dr. Greg
expertise.
thing with my degrees in the background as well. So.
Oh God. Okay.
But you're all in my claw fist right now. I don't have the studio that Greg does. So this side's closed. This side is academics.
There you go.
Thank
you
so
much.
Bye everyone. Thanks for having me.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, Kristen.
Okay. Love you.
Bye.
You're saying love you to us too.
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah, I mean, so basically, vitamin K basically it just stops your baby having a chance to get a blood transfusion, which is just crazy because a blood transfusion is way, 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 way more dangerous than getting a vitamin K shot. So like even their own risk reward, it's like, okay, so we're gonna be like, would you rather have a vitamin K shot or would you rather have me put blood into your kid because one of them is going to happen, you know? So it's just it's wild, man, and it's basically just permeated this anti-vaccine insanity has it permeated outside of vaccines basically, and they're basically trying to deny all medical care that's not even a vaccine.
A needle with the fluid is involved, and so
Yeah.
I mean, it is strange to think about, but like people do have just like this visceral reaction. Like if it's a needle on injection, like it must be bad, like automatically, or like this is only under dire circumstances type thing. You could just be injecting saline, but like people have an aversion to needles.
They're so uneducated that they literally think that everything from a syringe with a needle is a vaccine. It's like that's just wild, man. It's just absolutely wild. But so awesome. I'm so happy that she could come on. I think that this is like, it's obviously something that we talk about a lot, and she, you know, sees it in the other side. So it's cool to have Dr. Sharon on, and you know, as an OB last time, and then now like my wife as a NICU nurse, that's like as a NICU nursing on the other side. So yeah.
Could you explain why? I think I know half of it, but like they call it eyes and thighs. So like one is an ointment for the eyes, so some sort of
and
ointment,
the shot is in the thighs. Yeah,
the shot is in the thighs. Okay,
yeah, right. Yes, that's basically what everyone gets. Right,
definitely not a shot in the eye. That would not. I'm not a doctor, but
I figured that part.
Yeah. Every baby right after they get in, they're doing the assessment, and then they just do that right there during the assessment, because it's just like not even. But what happens and what's happened is that I think is because of the hepatitis B vaccine being administered not at that same time, but around day one of life. Then now all of a sudden now it's all linked together in their brains. So it's really sad, man. It's just really sad.
Yeah, your wife talking about some sort of a tragic and incredibly preventable increase in those brain bleeds. Like,
and in her life, dude, isn't that wild? Like literally in her lifetime career, like seeing this spiral out of control. It's so sad, man. They're winning. They're just guys. They're winning, and we have to like fight back. Genuinely, we have to. Oh, thank you, F1. I will. Yeah, we have to fight back on this stuff. It's just because people are literally getting injured because of it, and these kids, like Heather was saying in chat, like these kids are not consenting to this. right?
Mhm.
These kids are not consenting to, and they would most definitely want to have a preventable disease stopped if they can. So,
Mhm.
we are literally fighting for the future of that child when we get involved. I feel like in these issues.
It's awful.
And from based off the question that I asked and her answer, she also, from her assessment, she views it as like this is an information problem. Like all the things that
Mhm.
you're seeing, largely driven, even like the rise in home births, driven by pretty much like misinformation or disinformation.
Yeah,
And so it really is like an information battle that is difficult to overcome.
yeah, it's
The one-
sad, man. I think it's like a um, it's just really sad, and like seeing it's shocking, like how many people will come into the NICU, and these stories that she tells me. It's like, people will still be in this, like, okay, they're this is my birth plan, this is what I want to do. And my wife's like, you're in the NICU, your birth plan is long gone. Like, this is
Mhm.
like,
Yeah.
nobody's birth plan is to go to the NICU. Like, we are so
Mhm.
far beyond what that is. But they get this thing, this, it's like a wedding, it's like that
Yes, I was thinking that. Yeah.
yeah, that's sold to people's in their brain, on what a wedding should look like, and that's in their brain. That's also what a birth should look like, and anything other than that is wrong. And again, it's just, I don't know. This is one of the reasons why I really don't believe that life does not begin until birth, because there's so much stuff that can go wrong. Even people would tell me all the time, "Oh my gosh, you're gonna have another kid, Greg. You're gonna have another kid." No, I don't. I don't have another kid.
Mm.
I have a pregnant wife, and my number one concern right now is my wife staying healthy and living through whatever this is. Like, I do not have a kid yet.
Mm.
So, it would be a constant battle. Oh, are you excited to have a baby boy or baby girl? No, not yet, because it's not here yet. I have a pregnant wife, and we're going to be doing something extremely dangerous. There's a good chance that she actually loses her life on this. I'm very scared about this, to be honest with you. So it's
Mhm.
like, it's very sad. It's very sad how the risk that you take is just, play poker, man. Play poker. You play poker enough, and you get those 1 to 2% events all the time. That happens.
Mhm.
I played World of Warcraft enough that I would get 0.02% item drop rates. Okay. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, come on, dude. Like,
Now we're talking.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Now
exactly.
I can understand this. Thank you for putting in words.
You're gambling on something
Yeah.
that's like 10% for your child to be 10%, 10% to have your child have a problem, like a medical complication like that. Like, what are these odds?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I mean, I hear you, friend.
mm,
Again, like I think that it's a matter of education to disabuse the people of this, right? Like, we just don't prepare our girls and our boys for this. We haven't prepared me, Prime, for this either. Like I was saying before, right? Like, it's a matter of just presenting this information and doing it early, so people have an idea, and then once you do that, like, that's like the vaccine for, like, fraudsters. It's just education, having that base amount of knowledge. Then when people try to sell you BS, it just won't work. So that's a shame that we don't have that, but that's something that I would push that. The thing I
mm,
wanted to ask her, the one last thing I wanted to ask her, and you were kind of touching on it there, right? Like, she talked about how an individual, right, a mother, a couple, can do everything correct, and that, like, they can have the prenatal care, they can have the genetic screenings, they can have the whole process, right, and they can have like a healthy birth, but there are like illnesses, some sort of diseases or whatever, that can be missed. Like, I was wondering, like, what could those be? Do you have any idea?
yeah, I
What
mean,
could be?
sometimes, like, a really common one is, so like baby comes into the world, mom wants to exclusively breastfeed, so it's like just wants to breastfeed. First kiddo, it's usually about 4 days for the milk to drop, and basically mom is sitting there like nervous, like and knows that like she needs to produce, which is causing stress, which is causing they just went through a major thing and one of the most traumatic moments of their life. On top of that, now they're adding more stress on top of it, and baby just isn't feeding. And so what will happen is that they usually like let you go after like day 2, and then mom like basically won't try a bottle or anything, and keep trying to breastfeed, thinking that it's gonna happen, it's gonna happen, and baby like basically goes jaundice, and then has to be readmitted to the NICU because of that. So it happens all the time, man. Like stuff like that where babies like just have to like come back because of things like that. She just said that Pierre Robin gets missed along with Vactoril. I don't know what that is, but interesting. Those are two: Pierre Robin and VACTERL. But yeah, that happens, man. Like it again. It's like kids. Births and stuff. It's not like a concrete set in stone thing. People are like, you want to breastfeed. That's cool. Like that's awesome. Breastfeed. But like, if your milk's not dropped, like feed your kid with a bottle so it has a nice full stomach, because the baby just went through something traumatic too. So baby deserves to eat. So you do, the idea being that you do breast and then bottle, and then pump, in that order, because then you're stimulating milk production, you're also feeding baby, which gets mom to sleep, which is important. So it's stuff like that. It's like, but the problem is they'll get in. Vactoril is a collection of malformation. Oh, interesting.
So yeah, I'm the AI overview, and if it's wrong, then don't. Hopefully, your wife doesn't kill me. But it says Vactoril association is a non-random cluster of birth defects that affects multiple organ systems, diagnosed when a patient has at least 3 of the following features: vertebral anomalies, anal atresia, which sounds awful, cardiac defects, tracheo-esophageal fistula, renal anomalies, and limb abnormalities. It is not a disease with a single cause, but rather a sporadic association of abnormalities, generally requiring surgical intervention. The prognosis is largely dependent on the severity of the malformations.
Yeah, a lot. I mean, there's so much that can go wrong, man. Like, every single, another way to think about it is every single NICU case is a baby or a mom dying, usually both. Back in the day, both of those people are dying. It's just, and that's just how it was. That's why women died like so often during childbirth. It's horrific. It's absolutely horrific. Yeah, exactly. Mrs. Dr. G says this: the opinions are like assholes. Everyone has them. That isn't correct. It's true. And it's sad. It is sad. It's sad to have it's sad to have like people listen to the algorithms and their Instagram feeds and stuff like that, instead of like people, nurses that have dedicated their lives to this, that are like telling them, you can feed your baby, you need to feed your baby, it's okay. And so they'll even get some away with this, and like the NICU, like the actual hospital will have like actual breast milk that won't just have formula too, so they can do that. So that's an option. Basically, you have awesome moms that are like super producers, and they can just keep producing, and they'll come in like with gallons at a time, and they'll just like they'll give it, and they can freeze it, and it's like amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it really is amazing that they do that just for those cases, and just to let everyone know, for now or in the future, formula is perfectly fine for neurodevelopment. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to have breast milk. But breast milk has important things called antibodies that help keep your baby sick, keep it from getting sick. When the baby doesn't have a functioning immune system because of no microbiome, T cells, B cells aren't really firing off like how they should. So yeah, it's good in that fact.
Yeah. I'm curious. So like, I had an argument with a friend a few
Mhm.
years ago on stream, um, like kind of about our bifurcating society. This was the discussion was around like LGBTQ rights.
Mhm.
And that like it's like a blue state red state thing, right? Like there are blue states where you just have more rights, you just have more civil rights, period.
Yeah.
And then red states where you have significantly less, where those things are continually falling back. um it's not always, the breakdown is not always so simple, but that just is the way it is. And so like it seems like there's a what we're seeing now is a bifurcating of like health outcomes, that like people within the cultural sphere of Maha, or and some conservative circles and some religious circles, right, who are vulnerable to these thoughts, right, to these messages, right, like we're just having like bifurcated health outcomes where some of these people are just going to like fall for that and then like have disasters happening. And the thing that's it's even more insidious than like the LGBTQ situation, because in that case, like if you are of that demographic, then you experience like you're almost certainly going to experience like the lack of access that you are deprived. The thing is, if you are part of these vulnerable groups to the BS, right, you may not necessarily experience it, right? So like you could be a an anti-vaxxer, right, who's also skeptical of like the birthing process of doctors in general, right, who denies your kid the procedures your wife was discussing previously, like the eyes and thighs and stuff, who doesn't go through the whole neonatal of the prenatal screening process, who doesn't want like vaccines. You could be one of those, and like everything works out, right? And then you get to be one of those stories about like, well, the doctors don't know what they're talking about. But that submerges, like you were saying before, Dr. Greg, like the chances, the probabilities, because like humans are really bad at probabilities. That submerges the probabilities that are actually involved there. So others within that community, others who are receiving those messages, like when they experience it, like like they're not expecting it. And I would imagine like your wife was talking about previously, like they feel, oh, they failed, this is an individual failure, rather than you were set up to fail, like with these awful messages these people were telling you, and they put you in the situation with their lives, with their goddamn grifting, that like
Exactly.
now, yeah, you're dealing with the outcomes.
So exactly. So the grifters, they sell you the falsehood in the beginning. They pollute their brain, right? And then they go through a medical event that the grifter couldn't actually help, right? They couldn't actually impact the outcome of, because they're not a trained medical professional. And then they go through an event that is traumatic for them. And then on the other side, who's there to catch them is the grifter again, is because now they're like, oh, did they do that one thing to you? Oh, it's all their fault. And they utilize and exploit that guilt that parent was going through, and then now they're able to sell them another another package again, just long enough in order for the event to happen again, and then they precipitously scale back, and then now it's like it's just so maniacal, evil. It's just I can't. It's just so gross, man. These Instagram holistic Maha influencers, they're never there to when it matters, you know what I mean? But they're always there to send you a referral link when it doesn't, and
Referral link, yeah.
it's
Yeah.
crazy.
Or if it doesn't go according to plan, like again, it goes back. It's not the influencer's fault, or it's not the result of
Exactly.
misinformation. It's like it's the person must have not followed the protocol like properly. Like
Exactly.
you must have done something wrong. You got to
they're
double down on the protocol now.
did they exactly? They can never take accountability because they were never actually doing anything that would actually like they were never in charge of anything that actually had a real outcome. You know, it's so gross, man. It's just so gross.
Very frustrating.
Yeah. All right, guys. I think that was the major stories you had. That was a good one. That was awesome to have on my wife for the first time. That was really cool.
Yeah,
I thought
fantastic.
we were going to see her on camera. I thought that's what you were offering.
I wasn't expecting that. That was awesome. That was really cool. That was first time, long time.
First time caller, I'm sure a long time listener.
Maybe.
She doesn't anymore. It's funny. I try to. She's like,
I've heard it all before.
You know, it's funny since I don't do the debates and stuff anymore. She's just like, science content's just kind of boring. But she used to always listen to the debates just because she was like, I'm just so worried you're gonna be okay. But yeah. Well, guys, go for it.
No, I was just going to say thank you so much for having us on. This was a really good discussion. I didn't expect that your wife was going to join us, but I'm very much glad she did. It was very educational, and it revealed a lot of unknown unknowns to me, right? Like that, like I was like unaware of, just like how complicated the birthing process was. So like it's quite scary, honestly. But it's good, like this type of education for, well, not just me, but anyone who might be listening, for those of us who haven't gone through the process. It's like really, really important. It just kind of like doubled down, like solidified in my head, just like how what a disservice we're doing to our young people and to our population in general by like not giving them this information, not giving it to them early, not giving it to them thoroughly, so they're armed with the tools to have positive outcomes, but to most likely have positive outcomes to set themselves up for success. So anyway, the point is that I'm very grateful for your wife for joining us. And then come find me on twitch.tv, youtube.com, kick.com, and TikTok at Primecays, PRIMECAYES. We have great conversations. It's a lot of fun, and join us.
And you can find me. Well, I definitely echo all the same sentiments that Prime just said in terms of grateful for your wife to come on and share their expertise and experience, and also highlights how much more I need to learn if or when I become a parent, and the knowledge gap that I need to overcome. But you can find me on Twitch, Corey Campbell 84, Twitter, X, YouTube, Instagram, Substack, TikTok. It's Corey Campbell, and thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Well, I appreciate you as always. I'll see you soon.
Absolutely, always a pleasure. See you next week.
Have a good one.
Take care.
Bye.
Okay. Jay Shea, thank you for sharing the acronym. I had absolutely no idea what that Vactorel. I thought it was just like some technical term. Didn't realize it was an acronym. But that acronym now makes sense. Okay, so thank you anybody that passed by. Overused Chute, I'm sure I missed a lot of people. Quite an active chat for today. Overused Chutoy. Bakul, thank you so much for passing by and moderating as well. And so yeah, that's it for this week. Should be back next week and probably gonna actually cover this article here. Pretty much a New York Times. a New York Times article. It's actually quite lengthy, where it pretty much like documents more or less like many of the things that happened at the CDC over the past year, and how RFK Jr. is essentially ruining just about every aspect of our health institutions. But yeah, that's it for this week. Thank you, anybody, for